I'm Eddie Muller. Welcome back to Noir Alley, where sometimes the backstories of our movies are darker and more disturbing than the films. This weekend's feature, Angel Face, from 1953, is a case in point. It stars Jean Simmons, who while still in her teens had become a very popular actress in England, her native country. She was only 19 when she co-starred opposite Laurence Olivier in Hamlet, earning a 1948 Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. And not long after that, she fell in love with London-born actor Stuart Granger and followed him to America, where they both pursued Hollywood careers. Unfortunately, among Simmons's many admirers was RKO boss Howard Hughes, who bought her contract without her consent from J. Arthur Rank. Now, as was the case with many of the beautiful women Hughes gazed upon, his interest in Simmons was more than professional. Like he'd done with Jane Greer before her, Hughes declared that if Simmons didn't play ball with him, she wouldn't be making movies much longer. Now, this was, needless to say, a nightmare for the actress and her new husband. Simmons has said that during their cocktail hours, she and Stuart Granger would plot clever ways to kill her oppressor. And she tried everything short of murder, in fact, to avoid Hughes and get out of her contract. Now, the conventional wisdom in Hollywood was if you had a beef with Howard Hughes, sue him. He'd never show up in court, since among his many phobias was a fear of appearing in public. He didn't like to associate with common germ-ridden riffraff. So Simmons sued, and a decision was eventually reached through arbitration, freeing her from the long-term contract with RKO. There was only one stipulation. She'd first have to make 3 more movies for Hughes. The actress was cagey, however. She had language inserted in the court decree that the movies she owed to the studio had to be made within a specific amount of time, thus avoiding Hughes's typical modus operandi of taking forever to finish a film, something Janet Leigh, another Hughes obsession, had experienced with the never-ending production of Jet Pilot. Now, with this clause in the contract, Simmons began counting the days to freedom. First, she made Androcles and the Lion, a costume picture set in Rome, coincidentally scripted and directed by Chester Erskine, who'd written the original story that became Angel Face. Following that was She Couldn't Say No, a light comedy that was her first co-starring role opposite Robert Mitchum. Now, once those wrapped, there was barely a month left for Hughes to squeeze another picture out of Simmons. Now, since she'd done a costume picture and a comedy, Hughes said, "Let's do one of those nasty little murder stories." He culled the files at RKO and turned up an unproduced original by Chester Erskine called, simply enough, Murder Story. Now, more important to Hughes than making a good movie was making the experience a living hell for Jean Simmons. To that end, he asked Darryl Zanuck for a favor, loaning out Otto Preminger, one of Fox's top-line directors. Now, not because Preminger was an efficient filmmaker who could craft a picture on an accelerated schedule, but because he wanted Otto to torture Jean Simmons. Preminger had a nasty reputation on the set, especially to younger actresses. But Otto didn't want the job. He thought the script was terrible. And to show you how badly Hughes wanted his vengeance, he drove himself to Preminger's house in the beat-up old Chevy he reserved for such rare in-person persuasions. He summoned Otto into the car and said, "I need you to make this movie for me." They drove around town for hours while Hughes tried to convince Preminger. And what finally sold Otto was Hughes promising him complete control as both producer and director, something Zanuck had never given him at Fox. Otto's ambition, of course, was to become an independent producer-director. So he said, "Okay, I'm in." Now, he was given a budget of less than $1 million and a mere 18 shooting days, but he brought in a trio of writers, Oscar Millard, Frank Nugent, and finally Irving Wallace, to shore up the screenplay. and they honed the story's darker elements to a wonderfully suffocating degree, crafting a story that is geometrically precise in its escalating and inexorable dread. Now, Hughes had said, "Hire any writers you want, Otto, and tell the story however you like. All I demand is that you destroy her." Now, I showed Angel Face years ago at one of my first film noir festivals with Gene Simmons as my guest. Now, she couldn't have been more gracious and amusing, but once we sat down to watch the film, the bad memories came flooding back. And before her first scene with Robert Mitchum was over, she retreated to the green room, unable to relive the misery of making this movie. Instead, she devoured a Big Mac and French fries, smoked cigarettes, and told me everything I've just told you, including that in that first scene with Mitchum, where he tries to calm her down with a slap in the face, Preminger called for dozens of takes, demanding Mitchum hit her harder every time, until Mitchum walked over to the director, slapped him in the face, and said, "Is that the way you want it, Otto?" Now, frankly, it's amazing this film got made at all. That it's elegant, eerie, and ultimately devastating is a testimony to the artistry and professionalism of a great cast and crew, a lot of rewrites, and a hugely talented, if tyrannical, director. From 1953, featuring a haunting piano score by Dmitri Tiomkin and starring Gene Simmons in an electrifying performance, here is Angel Face.